Okay. All right. So I'm just going to hit the record button here. All right. So welcome everybody. Anybody who's new, anybody who's coming back, thanks for coming here. This is our week 2 of me trying out this group teaching session. So last week we covered the hi Casper. So last week we covered the first section of the Song of Prayer and really addressing the question of what is prayer. And in that one, there was a lot in that. Honestly, the course is like jam-packed with learning and teaching. But the biggest part that I kind of got out of it was that prayer begins with bringing our problems, because our minds are problem machines, and bringing our problems to God, asking them to kind of be solved. But that never doesn't really work. And so it's a new, sorry, it's a new approach to prayer of basically going to God and the Holy Spirit and bringing our problems and asking our mind to be healed. Our mind that is seeing these problems, seeing those problems as the source of our unhappiness, um, and asking those to be solved, asking us to see actually that they already are solved, right? Because our problem is that we're asleep in the dream. And so, and that's kind of what we practiced in lesson 79, right? Which was, let me recognize the one problem that it may be solved, right? Because as long as we think we have all these little problems in the world, you have your bills to be paid, you have to pay, like you're going to lose your house, you lost your career or whatever, all these things that we have to chase and try to solve. You're on a rat race. And I think if you're like me, it's an endless rat race. There are always problems in the world, and they will never fill the void of what we're looking to fill. It will never do it. And so when we bring our problems to the Holy Spirit and ask that they be solved, um, that is really where it comes from. So our minds shift, and because our minds that are creating these problems all of a sudden can realize that the source of them is based on an illusion, that we're separate from God, that we're not in heaven, that we're in this world, this hellscape, right? We're not really here. And so so once we realize that, the answer can come to us. And the answer is that our problem is already solved, our one problem. So I was going to, before advance kind of through the Song of Prayer, through the different ladders of prayer and that advancement kind of up from asking our problems to be solved to really changing our mind. But as I was going through the section, I think what I realize is that forgiveness really is key to this, because the biggest problems that we have here in the world are the split that we have between ourselves and others. Those are our major problems that we suffer here in the world. And that's not by mistake. It is by design. It is that split that we perceive, the separation we feel between ourselves and others, that brings all of our drama, all of our problems. It turns like a minor problem into this major drama of that affects our self-esteem and everything else. And so the world, if you really want to induce some pain, it needs to be an interpersonal problem. And so so forgiveness really speaks to that on a deep level. And as we forgive, Jesus says this really, if you're going to go to the temple to make an offering, if you're going to go to God and you have a problem with your brother, don't even bother until you really have sorted that out, right? Until you have worked the forgiveness process, because you're not able to see the Christ in that other. And so you're blocked, and there's a block that we experience in going inward, experiencing oneness, experiencing peace, that is highly linked to our ability to see the Christ, to see the light in others. When that is blocked, our ability to communicate it with oneness, with peace, with God is also blocked. So I'm gonna move here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with a little bit differently this week, just with a short PowerPoint, just to give a little bit of a primer on some of the concepts in um, the Course in Miracles, because there is a lot of learning. Honestly, it's everything. Words mean different things than they do in regular English, and all of that is for a reason. It's kind of like it's because it's immersing us little by little into a new way of seeing. It is a shift in our way of thinking, and so it's kind of hard to teach that way. And so I find it's kind of an immersion. You'll pick up little bits at a time, and I ask you to kind of embrace a little bit of the confusion, because that is your mind starting to get it. You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to know what every term means exactly. It will click at some point, and then all the pieces will just kind of start to fit together. But what I like to do is, if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But I'm going to just give a little bit of the background that can help people to fit the puzzle pieces together. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen. How do I start? So all right. Let's move this over so I can read. Oh shoot, I can't. Okay. So I can't see the whole thing. So how does the world, so I'm giving this as a primer before we actually read through that section. It's just 10 paragraphs of the Song of Prayer, just to give a little bit of background so you guys can absorb maybe a little bit more of it. Because really that writing is so beautiful that um, I don't know, I kind of do a disservice kind of giving all my commentary, but I'm sure it helps to absorb a little bit. So how does the world view sin and forgiveness? So forgiveness in the world, this is how most people conceive of it, right? So in order to forgive something, something wrong has to happen. So forgiveness is kind of a looking away from something that is seen as real. One of the fundamental assumptions in the world is that whatever you did to me, it happened, you know? And and so in this event that happened, one person or an entity, it could be a corporation, could be a government, harms another person, incurring guilt and calling for justice. So if you robbed me of my money, so that's one person or one company, one government stole my money, and then now I'm left with less money. So I've been harmed in that way. And this happened within time. And that there is an injustice there. I feel harmed. I feel have less money to be able to buy my food and pay for my rent, and more so, I'm harmed really by feeling violated, by feeling weak, humiliated by this person who just took all my things. I feel unsafe in the world. You've shaken my feelings of safety from within my own home or whatnot. And so this is amplified even more so while the harm is ongoing. So if somebody's still doing those things, somebody's embezzling money from you, somebody is regularly verbally abusing you or whatnot, how do like I don't even think there's a conception in the world of forgiving that while that happens. That's considered being a doormat, maybe. Um, but so so yeah, within the world, the idea um, of forgiveness is that while all of this is going on, some people are just extra virtuous and they allow it to happen, or they're doormats and they have low self-esteem and they just allow themselves to be harmed. But the fundamental thing is that what is happening or what happened is real, right? So this is where it's going to differentiate from the course, and this is kind of a big differentiation, and the course is going to talk about. So that's one background part. So the other part, again, and this is what the course is so good at, especially in the very beginning, because in order to get us through all these things, it starts to tease apart the fundamental assumptions that build up our reality. And a big one is time, right? So in our conception of time as being linear, we have the past, present, and the future. And that lines up with the ego thought system of sin, guilt, and punishment or fear of punishment. So within the world of the ego, harm, one person harming another, happened. Something bad happened. Either you did something bad or somebody else did something bad that harmed another person. That incurs guilt, and that is what is felt in the present moment. And that's why um, there's different layers. So, I mean, we can delve into all of this, all the different emotions, but all of our negative emotions really come back down to guilt. If you sit with them for long enough, anger is just projected guilt. Sadness is a feeling of being punished, which can only really come like of lacking. It is a lacking, something's been taken away. It's a feeling of being harmed, at least. And really you can't feel that unless you feel guilt underneath it. So there's a fundamental guilt that is always with us, and you don't need to believe that, but you'll experience that if you sit with these emotions for long enough. They will eventually come down to guilt in the present moment, unless you're feeling the light, unless you like there's guilt and love, basically. And really there's only love. But anyway, this is kind of the way it works within the ego thought system. Um, Another fundamental assumption within the conception of time is that cause leads to effect. And actually, in the world, at least in the world's version of this, that actions or events in the world then lead to feelings of harm, feelings of pain, feelings of loss, feelings of fear of punishment, right? So fear of, and so this is a big one that I go through with most of you if you sat with me in some of our sessions of lesson number 5, right? That I'm never upset for the reason I think, right? So we think that our upsets, our anger, our guilt, our fear, all of that came from something that happened in the world, either something I did or something somebody else did. But that is completely reversed when we move to the Holy Spirit's thought system, which we're going to get to. Okay, so according to the course, in the world of time, in the world of events, of cause and effect, there cannot really be forgiveness, right? Because what you saw really happened. So the only kind you can't really forgive it. I mean, the harm has happened. That person has harmed you, and you're left uh, worse off because of it. So really, there's not really a way to really forgive in a real way. There are versions of forgiveness, but they never satisfy. They don't really transform and allow us to see the light in the other person, in the world, and in ourselves. And there are actually ways of going deeper and pushing the guilt down into another layer. But really, it makes it real and it keeps us caught. So if you're like me, these versions of forgiveness, which the course calls forgiveness to destroy, um, they I hated the word forgiveness before, right? It felt like kind of a manipulation. Like I need to ask for forgiveness if I did something bad, even though somebody harmed me. Like when you're a child and you're told to say you're sorry and ask for forgiveness, right? So this is a very different conception. It's almost like it should be a different word, but the forgiveness that we're teaching in the course is really a radical undoing of what happened and experiencing a reality that in which what seemed to happen was really an illusion. And from that space, you can fully let it go with peace, with gratitude. So, um, as the past and the future in this present moment. So as we let go of the past, as we let go of the world, because everything we see in the world is the past, and we let go of the future, right, our future concerns, and we sink into the present moment. Um, it's from that space, just in the present moment, is the only place that we can really feel this deep forgiveness, this awareness and remembrance of who we are as spirit. Um, so because our physical eyes can only see the past, we must, oh, should I can't read it here. We must dedicate ourselves to releasing our belief in what our eyes see. That's why lesson number one is nothing I see means anything. Because as long as if you believe the truth comes to you through your eyes, through what you see in the world, you won't be awoken to spiritual vision. So spiritual vision is what we experience in our heart, and that is our inner guidance system, where when you feel the peace, right, it is a skill to learn. This is a big part of what the course teaches, which is our spiritual vision, which is seeing through Christ's eyes, right, in the same way that Christ did. And it is a very difficult skill to learn because it means tuning into our bodies, right? And uh, as we tune into the present moment, often 99% of the time we're in our egos. And so when you tune into the present moment, tune into what you're feeling in your body, it is usually pain, at least for me. But as we learn to move into a new way of seeing and to learning spiritual vision, what you'll notice is a shift happens within your body, where the pain that you're feeling, for me in general, it's in my belly area. As I learn a spiritual truth, as I adopt it, as I practice the lesson, what I notice is that the pain shifts into my heart. And there's like the light starts to come through, and you can feel the shift. It's uh, like I was in pain, but then when I realized that nothing I see means anything, and that I'm more open to seeing spiritual truths, um, there's a little bit of a shift that you can feel, and there you can feel more light coming through your heart, more love, unconditional love, peace. As those come through, what those are do as you do enough of those shifts, enough of those healings, enough of those forgiveness processes, you'll start to develop a knowing. And where when you hear spiritual truth, when you sense it, when you communicate with God, right, there is a peace that comes there, an unconditional love. And so you you start to learn that that's your new vision, right? And we're going to practice some of that today. But basically, what brings you peace is truth. What brings you guilt, anger, fear, all of that, and pushes you into unhappiness, is a sign that you're seeing incorrectly. You're not in line with spiritual truth. And so this is what I love about this course, because this course is not about doctrine. It's not about learning things like, it's not like you need to believe all of the things that are in the book and then you'll be saved. It is rather their guidance. And so you need to learn these for yourselves. I don't teach any of these things just because they're in the book. I teach them because they're what they've worked for me. And when I've adopted them and brought them into my own mind, they bring me peace. So that's why I can confidently say these things, because it is what brought me peace. And that's all I can really say to you. But that is kind of the spiritual vision, intuition, or knowing that comes. What brought me closer to the experience of God, and that's what works. Anyway. Oh, I gotta go back. Shoot. Oh. Okay, so here are some levels of awareness in the forgiveness process. And there are levels of awareness because forgiveness in our interpersonal relationships that we have with others, with even with entities like governments, the world, and what our pets and whatnot. Um, uh, these are the layers. It should almost go the other way because these are kind of our interpersonal conflicts, and they kind of correspond to our levels of being immersed in the dream. So if you're looking here, so in this came from Alan Watson, but what we're looking at here is some interpersonal relationships. So in one where we're seeing ourselves as the victim of another, what we're experiencing is the cruel, powerful world, or another person who is cruel and powerful, who is attacking us. So I can think of for myself, it was the CPSO, right? They unfairly took my license. They smeared me through the media. And in that experience, I am experiencing myself as a helpless and enraged self, right? Because like, this is so wrong. What you're doing is so awful. Um, and so if you sit with that experience long enough, the rage will eventually come up. It can start a little bit with, oh, just sadness or feeling like you're defeated or whatnot. But if you sit with that experience of being attacked by another person, eventually the anger will come up. And that is an essential part of it, where you realize that you're experiencing as well that you're pushing blame and accusation back at the world. So this is kind of where a lot of us start with a lot of our problems with other people. Now, here's the conception of the world. Within the world's version of forgiveness, this person right here, can you guys see my mouse? I think. Yeah, okay. So this person is supposed to forgive the big, powerful world. And that is kind of what the course is saying, is like this, that you can't really do it, because within that you're affirming that what is happening within that relationship, what happened to me with the college, is all real, right? And so that is what the course is calling forgiveness to destroy, which we're going to review in a little bit in that section. From the perspective of the course, what they're saying is this person cannot forgive. It is the dreaming mind, our mind, that is making up both the world and the victim and the victimizer. It's only from moving into that and awakening to the fact that we're dreaming up the whole thing, that it's from that space that we can actually forgive and let it go. But we can't really do that until we know kind of where that is coming from. And so I'm going to get into that in the next one. But okay, so from this place, it's a very painful place to be in, while we believe that we're the victim within this dream that's going on right here. And so most of the time, what happens is you can move into that place of forgiveness, and you're trying to be a good person. And what we like to move, it's painful to be a victim. We like to move into seeing ourselves as a good person, right? And so that's this urge in ourselves for this forgiveness to destroy. I'm just going to let it go. I know what they did to me. It was horrible. And they're kind of monsters, but I'm just going to let them do it. And I'm going to move on. I'm going to let bygones be bygones. And I'm going to move on from this. And so that is kind of this idea of this preserving our face of innocence. So in this place, this is the forgiveness to destroy. I'm going to be a good person and just pretend you didn't do that. And so that in that, we still believe there's a big bad world. We still think that person is a sinner or whatever, but we're just going to let it go and move on. And so that doesn't really work, because, and what the course is really emphasizing here, is that you didn't undo it, right? So you are basically just, being a doormat, essentially. And as much as you can feel like you've kind of let things go, if you haven't, you can tell you for sure that you're not in the light, you're not feeling it. You're just kind of letting it go. And that's when forgiveness kind of sits in the back of our mind, and it is always with us. So our childhood traumas or other things that we've never fully let go of, but we've kind of tried to move on from. And that that prevents us from really uh, joining with that other person and realizing ourselves as the dreamer. So again, I'll come back to this later. So another thing that will happen, and this is ironically, it's a scary thing to do, but if you sit with this experience for long enough of feeling yourself to be a victim in this big bad world, right? And you're blaming that other person, what you did to me was so horrible and whatnot. If you sit with it for long enough, what will happen is the rage will build up so high from what they did to you and how awful they were to you, that you'll realize that those same urges, that same harm that that other person wanted to do to you, you actually want to do to them. And so from there, you open yourself to seeing a deeper layer of truth of this character, which is that this is our inner tyrant that wants to attack the world. And ironically, a lot of people are very scared to go there. And the reason is because we like to see ourselves as a good person, right? A good person in the bad world. Uh, but we're the dreamer of the whole world. So if we're dreaming up somebody else being bad, that's still us dreaming that up, right? And so if you, so a very powerful practice is to sit with it for long enough and open your mind without judgment and allow your inner tyrant. Not that you need to go and murder everybody and all that, but at least acknowledge that you kind of love it, right? You know, and so sometimes we let this out in ways that are not quite um, honest. But so, for example, if for me, this was a huge impediment to my healing because I wanted to see myself as good and not realize that I'm a horrible. I have a tyrant inside of me who's sadistic and controlling. Um, I wasn't able to really allow the forgiveness to come through. Um, but so when this happened with me with the college, right, and I was depressed and I was drinking tons and whatnot, and trying to deal with the pain of what was going on, um, I eventually came to the place where I could realize that, oh my, like that I hated their guts. I wanted them to suffer. I'd love for them to have a horrible, cruel death and maybe have some medical experimentation on them as well, right? Just like they were allowing everybody else to experience. But when I finally allowed that truth to come into my mind, not that that's the deepest spiritual truth, but it's the honesty of what I was really feeling, that I realized, oh my God, this, it's not me I'm forgiving. Sorry, it's not them I'm forgiving. It's me. Because that tyrant that I'm seeing in them is actually what I believe about myself. That's my experience of myself. And so while it can seem like you're moving backwards, honestly, when you move forward spiritually, your awareness becomes more open and you start to see that the evil in the world is really within yourself. And so you start to feel these urges, right, of wanting to control people. You get these outbursts and whatnot, but you're actually just allowing more of the truth to come through. And what that does is it opens you on a deeper level, because when you see it in yourself, it allows you to then accept that forgiveness that you were blocked from having before. Because when you realize that when I forgive the college, I'm forgiving that inner tyrant within myself, and you feel it immediately. So when I forgave the college, it was me forgiving and letting go of the reality that I thought of the inner tyrant within my own mind. And so all forgiveness of others is really forgiveness of ourselves that we've denied. So when we see evil on the outside, when we see evil going on in the Middle East, when we see evil going on in our own families or in the government, that is our own belief of evil within ourselves. And we're very reluctant to feeling that. But when you do, that opens your mind to forgiveness on a much deeper level. So you're kind of actually moving up when you start to see these. I'll say that to you because it can be scary when you're spiritually, it seems like you're spiritually advancing, and then you see oh my God, I want to murder that person. And not just as an expression, it's like you really hate them. You're actually just seeing a little bit more of the truth. Okay. And so after that is where we're moving into the area of true forgiveness. And so, like I said, with uh, the the ego level, then what the course teaches is the call for love, right? Where we reinterpret. So when we bring our grievances and our pain to the Holy Spirit, um, we ask for a reinterpretation. And one of the ones, the big ones that are so helpful in the course, is the call for love. And honestly, we could do a whole talk on that one, so I'm not going to go too deeply in it. But essentially, it's reinterpreting that anytime anybody does something to harm us, it is a part of ourselves that is calling out for love. It's calling out for a loving presence and reinterpretation so that we can heal that person. And so any harm from any person is a call for love. But even in that, there's a little bit of making it real. And so so that's a step forward. Each one of these really is a step forward, because you're getting more and more honest, but then you're starting to open yourself up to the truth. And I unfortunately can't see it. I got to move my video, I think, here. And then is probably one of the highest spiritual practices, which we're going to work on a little bit today, which is of seeing what the world as not the truth. And so what you do is you look at that person and you see the Christ behind them. You see the light and you feel that in your heart, and you acknowledge that that's the only reality, and that what they seem to be doing, the way they seem to be acting, is only a dream. And so you can't do that until you open your heart, you feel the light that is in them. And what that does is that is the deep forgiveness work. And when you do, when you see that they're actually the light, they're not this character that we made up in our mind, who's out to get us. When we see that, it's and we see the light in them, it not only dissolves them, but it transforms our view of ourselves, because we see and we feel and we know in our heart that the light in them is the light in us, and that is the light of unconditional love, of God, of peace, of oneness. And so when we forgive the other, it transforms our view of ourselves, and that is the deep power of forgiveness that will let you see that every opportunity you have to forgive, every seeming harm that you experience, is actually a profound gift. Because not that the awfulness is good on its own, but it's all an opportunity to heal something within yourself and transform yourself, and realize that you're the dreaming mind, that you've never left heaven, and that peace and oneness are yours right now, and they always were. Okay. Yeah, so forgiveness wakens us to our nature as the dreamer. So when we forgive, it brings us to that. So this is from the text. You are the dreamer of the world of dreams. No other cause it has, nor ever will. Nothing more fearful than an idle dream has terrified God's Son, which is us, um, and made him think that he has lost his innocence, denied his Father, and made a war upon himself. So fearful is the dream, so seeming real, could not waken to reality without the sweat of terror and a scream of mortal fear, unless a gentler dream preceded his awakening, and allowed his calmer mind to welcome, not to fear, the voice that calls with love to waken him. A gentler dream, in which his suffering was healed, and where his brother was his friend. God willed he waken gently and with joy, and give him means to waken without fear. So yeah, that is what forgiveness is. Everything that we forgive, everything that we heal within ourselves, gently wakens us. So we're not being ripped into reality, right? Because that would disturb us. Sometimes people do that with psychedelics, they seem to anyway, right? Where they get ripped into oneness and they lose themselves, and then they get completely disoriented from it. But the truth, forgiveness is, every time we forgive, it is like a spiritual power up where we start to slowly, gently waken, and our dream is transformed from this hellscape into a gentle dream where a brother, our enemies, right, turn into our friends, right? And it's a beautiful experience that hopefully we can experience just a teensy bit of tonight. Again, this nature of ourselves as the dreamer. So yeah, just to bring again the idea of a dream. When you think of dreaming at night, cause and effect are reversed. So if you go to bed stressed out about an exam or whatever, what kind of dreams are you going to have? They're going to be nightmares about punishment, about making mistakes, about not meeting expectations and all of that. If you go to bed with sexual desire, you're going to tend to have a dream with sexual desire. And if you've ever had an experience, and I have, of being partially awake, partly waking up, but also being in a dream, and then you hear other things going on in the real world. Somebody knocks on a door, and in my dream, somebody was hammering on a nail. That's kind of the way that dreams work. That they kind of incorporate and they bring in the feelings and everything that we have, and then they become representations in our mind of the feelings that are there. So that is one example of the feelings not being the result of the dream themselves, but actually the cause. So you change the feelings, you get rid of the stress in your life, your dreams will be more pleasant dreams. And so that is part of this forgiveness. As we heal the feelings we have, the guilt, the anger, the whatnot, the unforgiveness, our dream will shift. And so because our minds are so powerful and we're just in a thicker, longer dream, our world will begin to shift. So this is kind of just my primer a little bit before we go into the course. And then I'm just going to read through that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this one. And then I'm going to go right to the Song of Prayer. We're already at 40 minutes. Okay. Might be mostly just reading through it, but I've kind of given a little bit of a primer. Let me see, it's not showing here. All right. So, so this is the Song of Prayer. We went through part of the first part on prayer, but I'm going to skip ahead, I said, to forgiveness. Just because I think as we forgive, it makes prayer more intuitive. It just comes to us more clearly. Whereas when you try to pray, when you have that blockage, it keeps us from being able to really experience prayer in a meaningful way. So forgiveness offers wings to prayer to make its rising easy and its progress swift. Without its strong support, it would be vain to try to rise above prayer's bottom step. We can't get there when we still have unforgiveness, or even attempt to climb at all. Forgiveness is prayer's ally, sister in the plan for your salvation. Both must come to hold you up and keep your feet secure, your purpose steadfast and unchangeable. Behold the greatest help that God ordained to be with you until you reach him. Illusion's end will come with this. Unlike the timeless nature of its sister, prayer, forgiveness has an end, for it becomes unneeded when the rising up is done. Yet now it has a purpose beyond which you cannot go, nor have you need to go. Accomplish this, and you have been redeemed. Accomplish this, and you have been transformed. Accomplish this, and you will save the world. So the first part of this we'll cover today is forgiveness of yourself. So no gift of heaven has been more misunderstood than has forgiveness. It has, in fact, become a scourge, a curse where it was meant to bless, a cruel mockery of grace, a parody upon the holy peace of God. Yet those who have not yet chosen to begin the steps of prayer cannot but use it thus. So that's why you see in the world, there's this conception of forgiveness is completely different. Forgiveness, kindness is obscure at first because salvation is not understood, nor truly sought for. And by that, they mean the waking up, the realization that we're one with God and that we're already in heaven. What was meant to heal is used to hurt, because forgiveness is not wanted. Guilt becomes salvation, and the remedy appears to be a terrible alternative to life, right? So in the world, guilt is seen as salvation, not guilt in myself, but guilt in somebody else. When we can blame somebody else for the pain that we feel or the harm we see in the world, we feel better, right? At least I'm better than those monsters over there in the Middle East or whatever, right? So that's why we love to see it on the outside. We love crime movies. We love watching true crime and whatnot because at least we're better than those people, right? And we do this with other people in their lives as well. Okay. Um, okay, forgiveness to destroy, right? This making the error real, and just pretending not to see it, will therefore suit the purpose of the world far better than its true objective, and the honest means by which this goal is reached. Forgiveness to destroy will overlook no sin, no crime, no guilt that it can seek and find and love. Dear to its heart is error, and mistakes loom large and grow and swell within its sight. It carefully picks out all evil things and overlooks the loving as a plague, a hateful thing of danger and of death. Forgiveness to destroy is death, and this it sees in all it looks upon and hates. God's mercy has become a twisted knife that would destroy the Holy Son he loves. And that is because when we forgive to destroy, when we forgive by trying to be a good person, um, it makes it real, right? You're saying what you did really happened, and our mind actually does that. We've made that person who is the Christ. The truth of them is that they are the Christ. They are the light, and we want and have made them into a victimizer. We've made them into that tyrant. We've dreamed them into that. We've blocked the Christ in them, and that's why it seems so benign, right? Oh, I saw what you did, but it, like that passing of judgment on that person because we're the ones making them into that tyrant. We're making them into the bully. We're making them into the tyrannical government and the genocidal, whatever, terrorists. So, would you forgive yourself for doing this? Then learn that God has given you the means by which you can return to Him in peace. Do not see error. Do not see sin, right? So, error is used um, for sin often in the course. So do not see it. That's what he's saying. So if you are seeing somebody sinning, right? If you are seeing yourself sinning or whatever, that's your problem. So do not make it real. Select the loving and forgive the sin by choosing in its place to see the face of Christ, right? So your problem is that you've made that real. You're a separate person. You're kind of awful. You're harming me. Um, the solution is the forgiveness process of looking at them, dropping, or at least infusing some doubt in what you see with your own eyes, and open your mind that maybe what I'm seeing is not real. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe hidden just behind this movie screen that I made up of all these awful, horrible people in the world who are out to get me is the face of Christ. And actually, Christ says that even in the gospel, right? Love your enemies. Your enemies are the number one person that God is hiding. Not because he's hiding, it's because we're pushing him away. So that's why that's our biggest ticket to finding love. So, okay. So where am I? Select the loving and forgive the sin by choosing in its place the face of Christ. How otherwise can prayer return to God? He loves his son, talking about our brother, the one we see as our enemy. Can you remember him? Can you remember God and hate what he created? This person, Klaus Schwab, Justin Trudeau? You will hate his father if you hate the son he loves. For as you see the son, you see yourself. And as you see yourself, is God to you. So Jesus says this as well, right? Like, however you treat the least of these, not the least of these like the poorest, right? Sometimes those things people are even exalted or whatever. It's the least of these are the ones you hate, right? They're the people who annoy the hell out of you, the people who ruin your life. Those are the ones, how you treat those ones is how you are treating God because it's universal. So what, like, You can't experience unconditional love while you're holding it out against one person. So that's why it's key to go to your enemies, because those are the ones, when you heal and forgive your enemy, it's automatically converted to everybody else. But the hardest one is the one you go to, because that's where the block is. That's why you love your enemies. They are your ticket. They are your ticket to God. Okay. So as prayer is always for yourself, so is forgiveness always given you. It is impossible to forgive another, for it is only your sins you see in him. That's what I was showing you there before. When you sit with it long enough, you realize that you're the one who wants to control, terrorize, torture, and whatnot. And there's reasons for that we can get to, but you want to see them there and not in you, right? Because the truth is that they're in us. We like to see them on the outside. That's why we turn the face of Christ in others, and we see them as these harmful figures. We wanted to do that as the dreaming mind because we didn't want to see the guilt within ourselves. That is why forgiveness of another is an illusion. Yet it is the only happy dream in all the world, the only one that does not lead to death. Only in someone else can you forgive yourself, for you have called him guilty of your sins, and in him must your innocence now be found. Who but the sinful need be forgiven? And do not ever think that you can see sin in anyone except yourself, right? Because all of it is within our dream, right? So if we put it into another dream figure, it's never leaving our own mind. So it's all within the mind of ourselves as the dreamer. And by trying to put it off onto somebody else, you're not, it doesn't leave your mind. And you can feel that within yourself. Do you feel better when you see yourself as a victim and the other person as a victimizer? It's actually an attack. We do this with others too. We turn others into victims, right? Because that justifies us even more in seeing how awful the other person is. And yeah, okay. This is the great deception of the world, and you the great deceiver of yourself. It always seems to be another who is evil, right? And in his sin are you the injured one. How could freedom be possible if this were so? You would be slave to everyone, for what he does entails your fate, your feelings, your despair or hope, your misery or joy. You have no freedom unless he gives it to you. And being evil, he can only give of what he is. You cannot see his sins and not your own, but you can free him and yourself as well. So that's the power of forgiveness, right? So in this world, we feel like we're controlled by governments. They're all corrupt. They're all awful, right? And not just governments, but other people in our lives. And the ticket is forgiveness, and seeing through that. So forgiveness truly given is the way in which your only hope of freedom lies. Others will make mistakes, and so will you, as long as this illusion of a world appears to be your home. Yet God himself has given all his sons a remedy for all illusions that they think they see. Christ's vision does not use your eyes, but you can look through his and learn to see like him. So that when you look through love, you feel it in your heart. When you see the light, it is a light not seen with your eyes, but it is a felt as unconditional love and peace. You can feel it. Christ's vision does not use your eyes, but you can look through his and learn to see like him. Mistakes are tiny shadows, quickly gone, and for an instant only seem to hide the face of Christ, which still remains unchanged behind them all. His constancy remains in tranquil silence and in perfect peace. He does not know of shadows. His the eyes that look past error to the Christ in you. Ask then his help. H with a capital H is always the Holy Spirit, our inner teacher, our remembrance of our unity with God. And ask him how to learn forgiveness as his vision lets it be. You are in need of what he gives, and your salvation rests on learning this of him. Prayer cannot be released to heaven while forgiveness to destroy remains with you, right? This is why if the other section on prayer didn't really mean much to you or didn't really sink in, or when you try to meditate or pray, it goes nowhere, forgiveness, right? That's the sign. God's mercy would remove this withering and poisoned thinking from your holy mind. Christ has forgiven you, and in his sight the world becomes as holy as himself, who sees no evil in it, sees like him. For what he has forgiven has not sinned, and guilt can be no more. Salvation's plan is made complete, and sanity has come. Forgiveness is the call to sanity, for who but the insane would look on sin when he could see the face of Christ instead? This is the choice you make, the simplest one, and yet the only one that you can make. God calls on you to save his son from death by offering Christ's love to him. This is your need, and God holds out this gift to you. As he would give, so must you give as well. And thus is prayer restored to formlessness, beyond all limits into timelessness, with nothing of the past to hold it back from reuniting with the ceaseless song that all creation sings unto its God. It's a lot of flowery language, but essentially, when we forgive, there is a joining. This is how we sink into the present moment. And if we're not there, it's because there's unforgiveness in our hearts. And so that's why I wanted to skip to this section earlier, because this is key, like the experience of oneness, of present moment awareness, is an interpersonal experience. And that's why I just love this course, because forgiveness is really the key. But to achieve this end, you first must learn before you reach where learning cannot go. Forgiveness is the key. But who can use a key when he has lost the door for which the key was made and where alone it fits? Therefore, we make distinctions so that prayer can be released from darkness into light. Forgiveness's role must be reversed and cleansed from evil usages and hateful goals. Forgiveness to destroy must be unveiled in all its treachery and then let go forever and forever. There can be no trace of it remaining if the plan that God established for returning be achieved at last and learning be complete. This is the world of opposites, and you must choose between them every instant while this world retains reality for you. Are you choosing the Holy Spirit? Are you choosing to see with the eyes of peace, or are you choosing to see with the eyes of guilt? Yet you must learn alternatives for choice, or you will not be able to attain your freedom. Let it then be clear to you exactly what forgiveness means to you, and learn what it should be to set you free. The level of your prayer depends on this, for here it waits its freedom to ascend above the world of chaos into peace. All right, so that's it for that section. All right, there's a lot there, but if any of you guys have any questions or any comments about that before we move on to our experiential part, we're going to try to reach the light in our enemies. All good? Okay. All right. So I'll just acknowledge that there's a lot there. It's honestly, it's really beautiful when it takes a lot of the experience. And so what we're going to move into is that experience of trying to reach the light in another person, and to see and experience and feel the truth that goes beyond what we seem to have experienced with that person. This is honestly a pretty advanced practice. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, but if you're caught up in a lot of chaos and a lot of grievances and problems in your mind, it can be a little harder there, and that's okay. So even if you get a little, if you can feel and know a tiny bit of the light, this exercise will bring you very far ahead in your spiritual practice. You don't need to have the full light. You don't have to, like, even if it's like, I know what they did to me and I know that they're awful, but there's a 1% experience, like maybe the light is there. And because that is powerful enough, because that will be a little bit of, it's a crack in your mind that allows the light to come in. When the light comes in, it begins to heal and it will grow, and you will eventually, it might not happen right away, but eventually you will know that the light is the truth. So open your mind, be okay with your mind not quite being there. I'm going to try to make this one shorter so it's not um, like a whole half an hour of sinking in. But um, but this one, honestly, it was one of the most powerful ones in my healing, and I used it with Justin Trudeau, Chrystia Friedland, and those ones actually they were hard. They're very hard to do. There is a cringe factor in this, but what I've noticed is as you progress in healing and forgiveness, the the hatred tends to come in closer, right? So in your relationships, it'll end up somebody closer to you, like your boss or whatever. The grievances will kind of move in closer. And again, sometimes you think that you're getting worse, right? That you're backtracking on your spiritual journey, but really it's the opposite. You're just allowing more darkness to come into the light, and that's what you'll notice with some of this. So I encourage you just to pick whoever pops into your mind. That's really the best way to go there when we're looking at this practice. So this lesson is 161. So give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. So today we practice differently and take a stand against our anger, that our fears may disappear and offer room to love. Here is salvation in the simple words in which we practice with today's idea. Here is the answer to temptation, which can never fail to welcome in the Christ, right? The light in the other person, where fear and anger had prevailed before. Here is atonement made complete, and the world passed safely by, and heaven now restored. So when we can see the light in another person, that brings us into the experience of heaven. Here is the answer of the voice for God. So I'm not gonna read through this whole thing, it's too long. So I'm just gonna pick out some parts here before we get to the practice part. Okay. One brother is all brothers. Every mind contains all minds. So when you forgive one person fully, it automatically transmits to others, and so that's why the practice of forgiving your enemies is so powerful, because they're the ones with the most of your guilt in them. So it's when you accomplish that one, it brings the most light through. Um, okay. Okay, it seems to be the body that we feel limits our freedom, makes us suffer, and puts out our life. Yet bodies are but symbols for a concrete form of fear. Fear without symbols calls for no response, for symbols can stand for the meaningless. Love needs no symbols being true, but fear attaches to specifics being false. So what they're saying here is what we're going to do is we're going to bring up our enemies. We're going to look at them. We're going to look at their body. We're going to look at their face. We're going to look at what they did to you. We don't need to delve into that deeply, just enough that we feel the revulsion, right? The anger, the fear, right? That they're going to attack us. And so hatred needs specifics. So hatred needs a body, it needs a story. And so as we move into love, as we move into the light, it moves us into the present moment where we give up that past, present, future story about what happened. And we can tune into the light. So bodies attack, but minds do not. This thought is surely reminiscent of our text, where it is often emphasized. This is the reason bodies easily become fear symbols, that you have many times been urged to look beyond the body, for its sight represents the symbol of love's enemy. Christ's vision does not see with the eyes. The body is the target for attack, for no one thinks he hates a mind. Yet what but a mind directs the body to attack? What else could be the seat of fear except what thinks of fear? Hate is specific. There must be a thing to be attacked. An enemy must be perceived in such a form that he can be touched and seen and heard and ultimately killed. When hatred rests upon a thing, it calls for death as surely as God's voice proclaims there is no death. And because we're in a dream, our mind is very powerful. Fear is insatiable, consuming everything its eyes behold, seeing itself in everything, compelled to turn upon itself and to destroy. Who sees a brother as a body sees him as fear's symbol, and he will attack, because what he beholds is his own fear external to himself, poised to attack, and howling to unite with him again. Mistake not the intensity of rage projected fear must spawn. It shrieks in wrath and claws the air in frantic hope that it can reach its maker and devour him, right? So this is like, this is, again, like I said, like don't be afraid to feel the anger, the rage, the fear. Like it is, the truth is that it is much more intense than we're willing to acknowledge. So this to the body's eyes, behold, in one whom heaven cherishes, the angels love and God created perfect. So this is what our mind wants to see. We want to see the evil on the outside, the horrible monster, the werewolf, the tyrant, the genocidal maniac. We want to see that on the outside. So we don't, but this person is the same one that God created perfect. This is his reality, and in Christ's vision is his loveliness reflected in a form so holy and so beautiful that you could scarce refrain from kneeling at his feet. Yet you will take his hand instead, for you are like him, in the sight that sees him thus. Attack on him is enemy to you, for you will not perceive that in his hands is your salvation. Ask, like, and this is right in the Our Father, right? Like, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. We cannot get into heaven. We cannot experience peace and oneness and unity with God until we are friends with our enemies. And this is the ticket to do that. Ask him but for this, and he will give it to you. Ask him not to symbolize your fear. Would you request that love destroy itself, or would you have it be revealed to you and set you free? Today we practice in a form we have attempted earlier. Your readiness is closer now. Okay, 1 second here. Okay, so here's the practice. So we're going to select one brother. So one person, an enemy or whatever, whichever pops into your mind, but you probably already have thought of them, and ask salvation of him, right? That's, like, this is very hard to do. If you're doing it right, there'll be a revulsion in your body. You can feel like asking salvation of that guy. Oh my God, he's so nasty and mean. See him first as clearly as you can, in that same form to which you are accustomed. See his face, his hands and feet, his clothing. Watch him smile and see familiar gestures which he makes so frequently. Then think of this. What you are seeing now conceals from you the sight of one who can forgive you all your sins. When you forgive him, then you are forgiven. You'll experience that yourself. You'll feel it immediately. This is not something that's going to happen after you die. You'll feel it right away. Whose sacred hands can take away the nails which pierce your own and lift the crown of thorns which you have placed upon your bleeding head. The reason we experience suffering is because of the guilt that we hold within our own mind. And that guilt we push outward onto others. So when we forgive our enemies, this is the key to relieving our suffering. When we let go of that guilt, we take away that call to punishment that's in our mind. Okay, ask this of him that he may set you free. Okay, so give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. So I'm going to add a little bit more into this, but what we're going to do is I'll get everybody to close their eyes and take a few deep breaths. And as you do, I'd like you to tune into your body. So just notice your face, whatever you're feeling there, your neck, noticing if it's tense, if it's loose. But pay special attention to your chest and belly. So in your chest, just noticing if your heart feels open, if it feels closed, if it feels numb, if you feel like it's heavy or if it's light. And again, going to your belly where I feel most of my pain. Just noticing if there's tension there, if your belly feels numb, or if you can feel any kind of sensation like relaxed or tense. Okay, so just lightly, we're not delving too deeply into that right now, but just to have an awareness, because that is a key to practice here. You need to be in tune with your body to notice the shift. When your mind shifts and you feel it, you feel the light start to come through in your heart, that is key to learning the course and knowing, right? You're not just taking somebody's word. When you feel it for yourself, you will know. Okay, so now what I'll get you to do is pull up one brother, sister, whoever it is. Could be a corporation, could be a government. It doesn't have to be a person, but whatever comes to your mind, and there'll be symbol for all the rest. And what I want you to do is just picture them within your mind in front of you and pull up details, right? You want to see their face, you want to see what they're wearing, you want to see their common gestures and what they're doing. You don't have to reenact your trauma necessarily, but just enough to feel in your body the way you would feel if they just kind of walked up in front of you right now. And now with them there within your mind, I want you to again return to your body a little bit and feel whatever you feel there. So for me, it is like a desire kind of to turn away. I feel repelled. So maybe a little bit of disgust or something that might be there, and resentment. And I feel that kind of in my belly and in my chest. So just tune into that even just a little bit. So I want you to be aware of that because we're going to stay tuned into that as we do this practice, but it's going to be kind of key. So you want to stay tuned into that, stay tuned into the figure of the body. Now, what I want you to do is take that picture of them while you're feeling what you feel and allow it to fade a little bit, fade to about 50%, right? So you're seeing it there, that person there, but they're a little translucent. Now, just behind them, I want you to imagine some light. And sometimes it's very hard to do this. And the key is we're not just imagining light, but we want to eventually start to feel it. So, and what we're going to do is we're going to repeat some lines that will hopefully help that light to grow and for us to feel it. And as you begin to see light, or maybe you don't, and that is okay too, I want you to pay special attention to your heart, how that light feels. I think that's a key practice here of just noticing. If you don't feel anything, that's also helpful, but just notice that. Okay, so we have that enemy in front of us where they're a little bit translucent. We're looking to see the light behind them. This is their soul, their essence, their spirit, who they really are in God's eyes, in the eyes of truth, in the eyes of heaven. Now, repeat after me. You are not the body. You are free. You are as God created you, holy and innocent, perfectly at peace, unable to harm or be harmed. I release you from this figure that I've made you into. And I allow myself to see you as you really are. You are the light. Give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. I would behold you with the eyes of Christ and see my perfect sinlessness in you. And as we say that, and you can repeat that in your mind, give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. Feel like I do a bit of that revulsion, like, oh my God, right? Like what, like how am I supposed to want your blessing? You know, this guy is a monster, right? Feel that a little bit, but allow that feeling to kind of be there in your belly. Open yourself to your heart to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the light is really in them. and they are not who they seem to be. Give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. And open yourself if you can, just to feel that light grow in them, and feel that light shining into your heart. Feel that light shining into your heart and starting to melt it, where you can feel even just a slight bit that there's a relaxation going on, an opening, a melting, a softening, even while you feel that revulsion. Allow that revulsion to be there. This is not about denying that. Allow the anger, allow the fear of this person. Allow that to be there. We're not trying to push that away at all. We're just allowing and we're inviting in the light of their true self to slowly grow and start to shine through. And what you'll notice, if this is happening for you, and if it isn't, that's okay too. Just open your mind to the possibility. But what you'll notice is, if as you start to feel that light shining through from who they really are into your heart, it's beginning to melt away, even just little by little, that judgment, that feeling of separation, that feeling of guilt and blame that we're feeling to them. And we're starting to feel that light is maybe the truth of what's really there. We allow both to be there, and that's really key with this. So we're not denying the anger, we're not denying the rage, we're not denying the sadness and the injustice, the powerlessness that the person seemed to make you feel. Allow those feelings to be there, but allow the light in them to shine away, even just a little bit. In this practice, we don't need to fully heal that relationship, fully heal that trauma, but we're opening ourselves that the truth in them can slowly dissolve away our belief in the reality of what they did to us or what they do to us. And just feel that light as you feel it moving from them to you. Realize that light in them is the same light that is in you. And you can't see the light in you, honestly, until you can see it in them. And in that, there's a knowledge that really we're one. And this whole dream that we dreamed up of this person as a terrible person who harms me, who can't stand me, who talks about me, that's something I made up to push my guilt outward, but it's not the truth of what this person really is. And what I can tell you I feel is not fully that. When you really forgive one person, you really forgive all, right? So there's still unforgiveness that is there, but what I feel is that melting of it a little bit. When I see that person or I think about that person again, that drive to blame them, that drive to push my guilt onto them is just a little bit less. And I can feel just a twinge, not a lot, to be honest, but just a twinge of that unconditional love. Like maybe that is actually the truth of what's going on here. And okay. And that essentially is it for this exercise, of just allowing yourselves to feel the light a little bit. It is difficult. And if you're doing it right, there's a lot of pain that it brings up too. But what I find is it allows the pain to come up in a way that allows us to let it go. I'm going to finish off here. You can stay in a meditative state if you'd like. But just to read the end here. And he will answer whom you called upon, for he will hear the voice of God in you and answer in your own. Behold him now, who you have seen as merely flesh and bone, and recognize that Christ has come to you. Today's idea is your safe escape from anger and from fear. Be sure to use it instantly should you be tempted to attack a brother and perceive in him the symbol of your fear. And you will see him suddenly transformed from enemy to savior, from devil into Christ. So, yeah, that one wasn't quite as long, but it's a very powerful practice. And I hope that all of these meditations are things that are, they're little tools that uh, can be put in your little toolbox that can sometimes help you to forgive, to dissolve your pains. Sometimes this can be impossible. I can try to do this exercise and I cannot do it, right? And sometimes that's because there's something else that is blocking me in some way. But even that is a good experience because it's telling me, okay, my heart is closed. I'm not seeing the truth and what's going on here. Um, but but this one for me was very powerful. I used this one because you're asking, it's so cringe, right? To ask your enemy, these awful, horrible tyrants, right? That we see as monsters destroying the world. When we see them and we see our salvation, when we see the, the energy that is melting my heart, that's opened me up to unconditional love and peace, like coming through that person, it is it can more quickly melt your view of the world and the dream than anything else. Because what we think, when we really love to think in this world, is that there's spiritual people, and then there's worldly people, or there's good people, and then there's the freedom fighters, right? And then there's the tyrants and the sheep, right? And so we love to see those distinctions, and that is pushing the guilt on the outside. So and we love to kind of surround ourselves with good people and spiritual people or whatever, but no, the ticket to really waking up to healing on a deep level is to see the Christ in your enemies. And so um, often we're surrounded with them, really. When we're ready for it, they that experience will come. They're always popping up, all these forgiveness opportunities. So Ahava says, is it normal to feel great sadness? As an empath, I feel waves of sadness at the part of the human character that hurts me and them because of the light that exists in all of us. Does that make sense? Um, yeah, so yeah, this is a really good one, actually. I think this one is going to come into the section of healing. Um, so, so empathy and compassion is, I would say, is a form of forgiveness to destroy a little bit. And you have to have a very open mind for this because we often see compassion as a loving thing or whatever. Um, and that makes sense within the world of linear time, right? Where the awfulness and the harm that happened is real. But what we don't acknowledge is that we're the dreamer of that dream. And so if that's the case, us going, yes, what happened to you is so awful. Like you don't have the light in you. You guys are not seeing the light. Um, and so I feel sad for you that you're not seeing that, right? Yeah, you should be waking up, right? And so or just seeing what's happening over in the Middle East or whatever, and people getting blown up and or getting attacked by terrorists or whatever. Um, um, Having compassion for what happened there is acknowledging, is denying the power of our mind, because our mind has the power to dream up the whole thing. And so that's why what's very powerful with this course is that healing is intrinsic to the experience of forgiveness. So because it is our will to see guilt on the outside that causes destruction, we dream up these dreams on purpose of being victimized and whatnot. We also dream up dreams of other people's being victimized to justify our guilt on the outside. I did this where um, I was very much blocked in forgiving the college, right, for what they taken away my license and whatnot. And I was continuing in my legal fight and it was keeping me in misery and whatnot. But what was holding me on was like, okay, well, I can kind of let go of my license, but look what they're doing to everybody else. Like, look, they are um, they're forcing them to get vaccinated. They're being heartless. They're taking away good doctors. They're losing their medical care. So in that, I am agreeing and actually making that error real, right? And so I'm trapped in that mindset of seeing these people as bodies, not as spirit, right? And so there is no healing of the body, right? So in that sense, that to really help them heal, it is to allow them to wake up from the dream, right? And maybe that experience of getting the vaccine is what they needed to do that. Not that that's a good thing that we should want for people necessarily, but that is an example of kind of making the error real. Yes, you are suffering. Yes, you are a body. Yes, you are a victim of this other person, and I'm going to try to help you by whatever, giving you money or whatever. By what's and that's not a bad thing within the world, but when you wake up to your real power, you're the one dreaming them up into that victim. And so when we change our mind about people, it has effect, right? And so that effect is healing, and that is the healing power of the mind. When we forgive, we take away that part of our dream, like that feeling, right? That feeling of vengeance, of guilt, of blame that dreamed up them as a victim. And when we heal that, the dream begins to shift and we begin to experience healings. We begin to experience relationships being repaired. We begin to experience people with physical healings sometimes. The Course in the Song of Prayer, right? They said that's not the goal. If your goal is just to fix what's going on to them in the dream, it's not going to work. But when your goal is forgiveness and you heal the cause behind the suffering, the disease, the problem, when you do that, that is a result. So you can't, yeah. So with healing, the focus is always on forgiveness. When you forgive, healings happen. But if you're going out trying to heal a problem without acknowledging the unforgiveness behind it, it will never work. So yeah, that feeling of wanting to give, of wanting to love, of wanting to heal is a good drive. But it compassion is like the forgiveness to destroy of healing, right? So it is a denial of the healing power of our minds to be able to help that person in a real way that will solve the problem. Because you can give them a bit of money. No, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying it doesn't work. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't fill the void. That is our role here in the world, to help everybody wake up and to fill that void that they have within themselves, right? So this isn't saying don't give money away, don't do all those things. But compassion, if you feel it and you sit with it for long enough, it's painful. It's not a pleasant condition to be in, and it's experiencing a world of victims, and in that experience of victims, there's always a victimizer, right? So you can't experience compassion and seeing somebody as a victim without seeing somebody, something, some organization as the bad guy that did this to them. And so there is unforgiveness inherent in compassion. And doesn't mean you should feel guilty about it. It just means that there's another layer that is something that can be healed for yourself and that person who you see as the victim. All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments or?
Hi, Patrick, it's Monique. The part that was most difficult for me was the asking for blessings. It's like my stomach just went into a knot. Yeah. And it made me feel inferior.
Okay. Yeah.
And that made me realize that I felt superior. I hadn't realized that.
Yeah.
So then that's where I just kind of couldn't go on from there. I'm just still trying to work on that, because I didn't realize I must have felt superior. Like,
yeah, that's actually really good. Honestly, that means you did it right. I would say if you began to feel kind of that cringe of like, oh my God, how could I feel the light from that person? That's good, because at least you're going in the right direction. The key is to kind of look behind there. And sometimes we're not quite ready for that. The other lessons can sometimes help us to open ourselves to that. But I would say when I first started doing this practice, that was my experience. Kind of like, oh my God, what? Like, no, no way in hell do I want a blessing from that person. But what you've done is you have at least put that in your mind. So I would just bring that to the Holy Spirit and ask him to help see that person differently. And that will come. And sometimes it's just the moment, right? That we're not quite ready for that now because there's um, more healing that needs to take place, but it will eventually come where we can see the light in that other person. But I would say you did it right if that was your experience. You went in the direction and it will come with practice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, Patrick.
Uh,
So mine was like almost the opposite. And maybe it's because I've done it many, many times. Like I'm not new to this exercise in a slightly different format. But I felt this like very easy to ask for their blessing because it's almost like I'm at that point where I know everyone has that light.
Yeah.
But then that's where I got the sadness because then I was like, my human feels, I'm not done yet. My human feels very sad for them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good it's a good point. You feel sad for them. So sad for them. So I would say if you're why do you feel sad for them?
Sorry, I'm just also muting it because my son is still awake and it's like 11:30 here. Yeah, time change. I feel sad because I'm like there's something about me that feels there's this duality. You can say a quick hello, please. All right, yeah, it's because like yeah, it's so hard for me to explain this. It's like I see the light and then I feel wow, they're playing this role of oh dear God. Okay, can he show you guys his ball and then he'll be gone?
Oh, cool.
I can't believe I'm in Big Ben.
It's 11:30 here in England, and like he's had a cookie, the cookie he baked yesterday, and he's not sleeping right now. But whatever. um, I was very determined to do this. Yeah, I feel sad because I'm like, there's that duality presents itself. So I'm like, wow, there's beautiful light inside of everyone. I have no problem seeing Justin Trudeau's light or the light of people in my own life who are like doing stuff. But it's more then you can be quiet in Big Ben, sweetheart. It's more you will. It's more the duality that the human I know the human is playing a role there that's very, very like it's that bit.
Yeah. Okay. And do you feel that? Do you feel that light? Like do you feel it kind of in your heart? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel it. That's the sadness. I do feel it. Like I'm feeling the light. I'm feeling the warmth. Like I can feel it right here. And
Yeah.
then because it's bigger than them. But
Yeah.
then there's them who's like contracted into this character that I've given them. And that's where the sadness comes from.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
I love them and I can't love them in the way that my human would like to because at this point,
Yeah. So it sounds like you're doing it right. What I would kind of invite you to look at is that part of this experience in this exercise is upholding space for both. So we're holding space for the light, the unconditional love to kind of come through. At the same time, we're feeling all the other negative feelings that we feel. And that can be sadness for them as well. It can be compassion, it can be sadness, it can feel separation, it can feel anger, it can be whatever it is, right? It doesn't have to be just that they're the enemy. It's whatever. So what we're doing is we're holding space for the light. Sometimes I would say sometimes in my experience, it's like 2% light and then mostly all the negative that's there. And so what happens is as the light grows, and that will happen through many spiritual practices or whatever, but as the light grows, it slowly filters through it. So it starts to dissolve away some of those negative feelings. The longer you sit with them. Sometimes you can do this for hours. Not that you necessarily have to. Sometimes it's more beneficial to come back to it frequently. If you do it tomorrow or whatever, that can, you will move through more of that pain, move through more of that separation. Because what's really healing is the separation, the feeling that this is a person, that it's not me, right? There's a separation between us. And so sadness can definitely be a part of that. So what I invite you is just to sit with the light and allow the light to kind of bathe and dissolve that feeling of separation.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, because if there's a sadness, there's still a separation there, where I'm believing that these roles we're playing is still bringing that up, that
Yeah,
separation and that duality. Yeah,
yeah. So
I see
what
what you
a
mean.
thing I find very, very powerful in this is not because there's a feeling of, oh, well, I should just be feeling light about this person, right? So it's like, no, you actually welcome up the sadness, welcome up the disgust, welcome up all the feelings that you have towards them while you're doing this. And that actually helps, it actually grows the light, because hidden behind that is the truth, right? And so this is not a only feeling light and love towards somebody. No, 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 no. We acknowledge all the painful feelings we feel with them while experiencing that at the same time. That's not the truth. The light is still there. And so we'll eventually experience that the light is the truth, and that it's the only truth. And then those other things will dissolve away. And that won't happen right away in one meditation. That will happen over time. When you come back to this at another time, after you've grown in some other ways, the light will grow, and it will come with more peace and sincerity. Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything else? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming out, guys. I am working on putting up last week's up online for people who want to watch it. I'm going to try to put it on the YouTube channel. I'm working on that stuff. I don't know how to edit videos, so I'm just going to put the raw video, if people are okay with that. And but eventually I'm going to learn how to edit them out. Would you guys rather not be on them? Yeah.
I was literally thinking today that it would be so nice if you had a YouTube channel, actually.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I just, so I'm trying to get things up there. I have to verify things, and but yeah, I'm sure it won't be big, but just be so people can watch them later on. All right, well, thank you so much for coming out, guys. I really appreciate it, and hopefully you got something out of this, and I'll see you next week. Feel free to send me off a message with any feedback. What worked for you guys, what didn't. If I'm going on too long on certain topics and it's kind of, you're getting lost in it, I would love to hear that, because that's helpful for me, because maybe I need to keep things shorter in certain areas. I'm pretty new to all of this, so to teaching, so I would appreciate any of that. Okay, thanks a lot,
Thank you so
guys.
much. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
bye-bye.